The lift lines have been a little bit longer by virtue of the fact that people can ride the gondola by themselves if they so require. And the tram, the famous tram, which shuttles 100 people up to the top of the hill, now is only running at 25% capacity. So those things have been a little bit slower, and the lines have been a little bit slower. But as we were saying just before we jumped on this call, I think we have to thank our lucky stars and just be, thankful for the fact that we're blessed enough to be able to do this. And during a pandemic, I can't think of a better sport that you could potentially be able to do than one that requires you to strap things onto your feet that enforce social distancing. If you're touching tip to tip with someone else's skis, you're probably going to be about 6 feet away. So it's been great. Today was day 98 for me at Jackson Hole.
Wow.
Probably like day 112 of skiing since the start of the season, because I've obviously had a bunch of races around. And it's been great. As I said, we have to thank our lucky stars. How has COVID affected me? It's kind of happened in three different sections. The first section was the oh crap, what the hell is going to happen to the world situation, which was exactly a year ago from now. And my friends and I, we didn't miss a beat. We went out and bought backcountry equipment. And on the very day that this resort closed, which was, I believe, the 15th of March last year, we started backcountry skiing. I ended up doing almost 90 days of backcountry skiing in the Corona season, as I'm calling it. I hiked almost 300,000 vertical feet, which is the sum total of Mount Everest from peak to sea level, not to base camp. So from peak to sea level, 10 times over. So managed to get my body into, a shape in terms of cardio performance that had never been in before, even in my younger years. I'm not there right now. 3 months in Jamaica, drinking Red Stripe on a beach will do that for you. So that was the first section. The second section was the inability to get down to the southern hemisphere to keep skiing. As the listeners and watchers will know, Chile didn't spin a single chairlift, and all of the countries had really strict travel restrictions. So missed out on maybe 3 or 4 months of my training, and missed out on a bunch of races at the start of the season, as America was just trying to figure out what they would do and how they would try to operate during a pandemic. I would say that as of February, things have been pretty normal. Races have started to operate at a normal clip, so much so that I have 8 races coming up in 4 states over the next 3 weeks. So it's manic, almost like going back to my DJ days, where it's like every third day I'm on a plane to go to a new city to perform. But unlike in that world where I get paid to perform, now I'm having to pay to perform in these races. And so those are the three kind of the 3 chapters of COVID. And America's done a pretty good job at rolling out the vaccinations. I would assume that even though I'm under 40 and healthy, that I would have access to a vaccine here in the next month or 2 before I leave the country, which hopefully will facilitate my ability to travel through the summer and find snow in the southern hemisphere. So that's what I'm gunning for.
That's awesome. I mean, amazing that you've got that many days skiing. You are, everyone watching will be incredibly jealous. But
well, it was 181 last season without the southern hemisphere.
There you go. You're making the most of it. I'll tell you that much.
Well, the thing is, I have this incredible game of catch up to play with all of these 20-year-olds who have been skiing for 18 years and racing for 15 years, or these 25-year-olds that have been doing it the same, but add 5 years on. Here I am. My first ever race was just 14 months ago. And my first time skiing on a mountain was 5 years ago. So I'm playing this hyper accelerated catch-up game. And so I literally need to be spending every moment on skis.
Yeah, which is not a bad time. But yeah,
No.
let's go back to kind of like the start. You're originally, you grew up in Northamptonshire, correct?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have, obviously you didn't ski as a kid or anything like that. Your parents didn't ski, but did you have like mates that skied? Did you have like any thoughts about people who go skiing?
Yeah, I do actually. It's kind of a sad story. So I grew up in a working class background. My father drives a bus and my mother drives around disabled children for the local county council. So very humble beginnings. I was fortunate enough to have an assisted place to a very prominent private school between the age of 11 and 16. Obviously mingling with people from middle class and upper class background, shall we say. And I remember very vividly, very clearly, a trip in 1997, it would have been, or 98, where the kids that were well-to-do all went to Canada and skied. And obviously I didn't have the financial means to do that. So that was kind of like my first exposure to skiing. And it was a bitter one because I couldn't be part of the, the families that were able to pay for that.
Yeah, no, totally. I can appreciate that. And then like obviously skiing wasn't kind of part of your life at all. You headed abroad and spent I think 15 years as a DJ, right? And you did, I mean, amazing stuff like Burning Man and Summers in Ibiza, and to name but a few. And then, and correct if I'm wrong, you went DJing in Whistler. I won't go into too many details because I've read a few bits, but a bit of a dodgy party. But basically, some mates went heli skiing, and you came up for the heli skiing lunch. Like you took the helicopter up to meet them, and you thought, oh crap, how do I experience this more? Right? Is that true? What did you make of Whistler when you went there first time?
Yeah, so let me just kind of correct the timeline. So
Okay, apologies.
I started DJing in the year 2000. It was just a hobby. I was DJing on pirate radio and in a few clubs in London in my late teen years. I kind of put that hobby to bed when I went to university. When I graduated from university, I went to UCL, so electrical and electronic engineering. I moved to Asia. I ended up working in finance. At some point, I decided the finance wasn't really for me. And instead of being finance guy by day, I decided to be DJ guy by night, and managed to have a very fun career traveling the world for 10 years and getting to perform in over 60 countries, over 30 countries over my 10 years of doing that. Now, as a DJ, I kind of lived a very simple lifestyle in that I had one pair of jeans and I just used to wear white t-shirts and black t-shirts. And so I always would run away from the sports that were equipment heavy. So a lot of my friends skied and I had no interest because it requires a lot of equipment. And all of my friends kite surfed and I had no interest because it required a lot of equipment. But little by little, I got pulled into both of these sports. And the kind of being pulled into skiing happened by being invited to a heli ski lodge at the end of 2015. And I was invited with 30 of my best friends. We're all part of the same Burning Man camp. And as you said, I've played at Burning Man for the last 10 years. And I had a radio show and I had a residency in Ibiza when I was out there for 5 seasons. And so at the end of 2015, we go to this heli ski lodge, and there were about 5 of us that couldn't ski. But the lodge, it's called Mica, in British Columbia, has like 5-star accommodations. It's like the Four Seasons. So it was the best Christmas of my life. And on one of the lunch times, they basically took us, the house cats, to the top of the hill. And we met with the skiers for lunch. And it's just, a very basic lunch of bone broth and sandwiches. But at the end of the lunch, these guys pop on their skis and just disappear. Yeah. And I looked at the terrain, and I'd never seen terrain like this. And growing up in England, I'd never seen snow like that. A couple of hundred inches into the season at that point. Yeah. And I just decided there and then that this is epic, and I want to do this. So 2 months later, I was DJing in South America, and I get flown up to Whistler to DJ at a swingers party. It's not a dodgy party; it's a swingers party. There's a difference. And they were nice enough to put me into the Fairmont, which is ski in, ski out. And so even though I had no sleep, I was like, well, this is my opportunity to try skiing. And long story short, my 9th day of skiing ever was back at that heli ski lodge for Christmas of 2017. And I achieved what I wanted to do.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is absolutely incredible. Like when you got into skiing, this is actually a question we had posted to us from Instagram, and for anyone watching, comment any questions that you want me to ask Benji, and I'll try and ask as many as I can. Did skiing, Tracy Hill was wondering, did skiing feel accessible for you when you took that step to have your first ski lesson and get involved?
Did it feel accessible? I mean, there's a couple of barriers to entry to skiing. One of them is that it's one of those sports that's super equipment heavy, right? You got to get the boots don't feel good. You probably put the wrong boots on first time, or someone will, the boots are a problem. Getting the right ski, right length poles, right clothing so you're not too hot but not too cold. It's very daunting and inaccessible from that point of view. And so I find that unless you have a group of friends, or unless your parents skied, it's kind of hard to get into. And this is where I would reach out to everyone that does ski and just ask them to be kind and patient with all of their friends that may want to get into skiing. I like to dedicate a bunch of my time to new friends that are trying to ski, and I actually find that I can help them ski better than some instructors can, not because I'm a better skier, because I'm absolutely not, but because I remember the fear of what it was like to not have control over your skis. So they just started 5 years ago. Whereas a skiing instructor who may have learned at the age of 2 doesn't remember that fear and is unable to do that. So it did feel a little inaccessible by virtue of the equipment. But as with a lot of things, if you have a good support group of friends around you, or if you're willing to ask for help from those around you, there's always people that are willing to kind of like take a bit of their time to share the passion and the love for this sport and to get others into it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if there are people, which I'm sure there is, who are kind of, older, not saying you're old, but over 30,
Yeah.
or even older, what tips would you give if someone's going, do you know what, I've always wanted to ski, and during lockdown now I've kind of gone, it's a bucket list thing. I just want to learn
Yeah.
to ski. I don't want to be a pro. I don't want to be an instructor. I just want to, grab a few weeks here and there. What would your
Yeah.
advice be to those kind of older skiers that are learning?
So I think this applies to any kind of technical sport. What the majority of the population will do is take 5 days off of work or a week off of work and try to learn something that is incredibly challenging and incredibly technical. Now, let's say you have 7 days and you burn a day or two of that with travel. So now you have 5 days of skiing, and you're going to waste the day or two because you get the wrong equipment. The guy at the rental shop is not really paying attention. One day you might not like the weather. One day someone else, you might have a blow up at work. And so what I'm trying to say is most people think that if they have a week's holiday to learn something, that's 7 days. Actually, it really just turns into like, 3 or 4 days, because a lot of time is wasted in the admin of the thing. Now, I did this with kite surfing, and I know that I have a very privileged and lucky situation in that I was a DJ and I was doing my own bookings. So I had a lot of free time. But what I would say for anyone that's learning any complicated sport, try to put aside a big body of time, whether that's 2 or 3 weeks. And again, I know it's easier said than done, but we live in a world now where we can do a lot of stuff remotely. Because the cumulative learning that you have from doing something for 10 or for 15 consecutive days is hopefully going to put you into a situation where, like riding a bike, then you can come back and pick it up quickly. If you consistently try to learn skiing with a 5-day trip or a 7-day trip and you waste most of those days faffing around, honestly, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to be doing it for 5 years and you're not going to get really far with it. And that's just the way these kind of sports are. Muscle memory takes time to build and to grow. And I did the same thing with kite surfing as well. I just planted myself in a place that was great for kite surfing and just got out there and spent the whole day out there. And just be mindful that even if you're skiing very fast and you're a proficient skier, like myself, even for me, the majority of my day is sitting down on the chairlift, because even if you can get down that run in a minute or two, you're sitting down for 5 or 6 minutes to get up it, and you're messing around with your boots for another minute. So even if you're a very proficient skier, most of your time is wasted, and you're not actually doing the sport. So I guess the main thing I'm trying to say, and I'm rambling, is throw a big body of time at this and try to break the back of the sport, and then you can kind of dip in and out of it casually. I wouldn't recommend people try to do weekends and try to learn this sport. It's just going to be painful and expensive.
That is some great advice. I couldn't agree more. That's really, I think a lot of people, that's really good advice for a lot of people, especially when you're older. When you're young, you learn stuff really quick, and that's why kids pick it up so quickly. And it is more difficult when you get older. So great advice for sure. And so like we said, you didn't ski before 32, and then a lot of people, like I said, want to do it recreationally. Not many people go, do you know what? I think I'm going to go to the Olympics. And that's like, I appreciate ambition. That's real ambition right there. Explain to me how you got from, I'm just going to go for a few ski holidays to, I want to go to Beijing 2022.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's go macro and let's go philosophical. I believe that life on your deathbed should be this interesting series of events and stories and chapters in your book of life. And so, I modeled for a while. I went to a couple of great universities. I worked in finance in Asia. Who'd have thought that I would have jumped out of Wellingborough in Northamptonshire and go live in Hong Kong, Thailand, and Bali, and then Ibiza. I was coming to the end of my DJ career, which is, maybe call that the third or fourth chapter in the crazy story called life, and decided that I wanted to do something else. I'd achieved most of what I wanted to achieve from DJing. Now, when I went to the Olympics in 2018 as a spectator, I had only skied 15 days in my life. And I had noticed that there were only 3 Jamaican athletes. And so kind of like a kernel of an idea was formed. If there's only 3 athletes, then maybe it's something that is achievable and attainable. And it was just a crazy idea. It was a pipe dream at the end of a pipe dream in that year. But in that year, I totally caught the ski bug. I skied for a week in Canada, a week in Japan, a week in Chile, and a week in Argentina. And I was just hooked. And so I went into the 2019 winter, into the 2018-2019 winter. Oh, wow, there's a moose over here. Can I just turn the camera around?
Yeah,
check this, guys.
Absolutely.
I think you'll appreciate this. I'm going to step out of the car and show you the moose. You see him?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Oh, there's 2.
You don't get that. Oh my word, look at that.
Isn't that cool?
That is, yeah, that's very cool.
Beautiful Jackson Hole. All right, I'll get back into the car. I think that was a worthy diversion.
That was a very worthy diversion. Luckily, the moose that I'd paid to walk past your car, they did what they should.
Yeah, it showed up at the right time.
That's incredible.
So
Thank you.
I'll try not to miss a beat and keep going. So I went into the 2019 winter with the feeling, and I've just got to get the camera set again now, with the feeling that if I could survive a winter or a month of skiing, and the intention was to go to Revelstoke for a month, if I could survive, then I would do some research to see whether or not getting to the Olympics was even a possibility. And when I say survive, you might say, what do I mean by that? Well, I love to ski really fast, and I had no technique, and I was literally like a ticking time bomb waiting to break my neck or worse. So on the 5th day of this trip of going to Revelstoke, I had the opportunity to ski with former national level skier Gordon Gray here in the United States. And I told Gordon, I'm like, hey, Gordon, this is my first time meeting him. I said, Gordon, I have this crazy idea of getting to the Olympics in 2022, 3 years from now. What do you think? He says, okay, never seen you ski. Let's go for a few runs. At lunchtime, he pulls me aside and just says, okay, Benji, I'm going to be blunt. Your technique, absolutely terrible. But given the fact that you told me you've only had 2 lessons and you've only skied 25 days, it was about 25 days at that point. Of course, that's to be expected. You just don't learn the technique of the sport by osmosis. It's a very technical sport. He said, but what I failed to understand is that I've been skiing since I was 2. So for now, almost 35 years, and I've been racing for 30 years. I have no idea how the hell you're keeping up with me. You're absolutely fearless. And actually, being fearless is more than half the battle won, because we can teach you technique, but if you're afraid of going fast, that's a much bigger hurdle to overcome. Mm-hmm. And so Gordon was the guy that helped me turn this pipe dream at the end of a pipe dream, really a joke, into something that had some foundation based in reality, and helped me set out a bunch of kind of check boxes along the way, the things that I would need to do to achieve qualification for Jamaica in the 2022 games. And so that's when it really, we're only talking 25 months ago, 26 months ago, that's when it really turned on and became reality.
That is amazing. And I think there's so many people who are going, I wish I could do that. And it's awesome to see someone doing it. And I read that you found like a coach online that created like you a roadmap, so to speak. Explain a little bit for those who don't know, how do you qualify for the Olympics and how is it going? What's your progress looking like right now?
Absolutely. So I want to shout out to Mike Schneider. He's the coach who wrote that roadmap for me. And here's the interesting thing. When you're an adult and you're trying to get into a complicated sport like skiing, sometimes there are people out there that are complete strangers that are willing to give you a big chunk of their time to help you get to where you're trying to go. So, for example, I just went onto Reddit and I said, how does one get to 160 fist points? And I'll explain that in a moment, in the sport of giant slalom. The internet being the internet, there were lots of stupid answers and blah, blah, blah. But one guy, Mike Schneider, said, hi, I teach U16 up here in Canada. I think I'm the exact person to help you answer this. What are you trying to do? Give me some more information, which I did. He then proceeded to write an entire dissertation on this is the type of equipment you need. This is the type of training you need. This is where in the world you should try to place yourself if you can. These are the types of books you should read for sports psychology. these are the exercises you should do during the summer season on dry land. You know, like, great guy. And I still speak to Mike every single week and update him, and he updates me. Now, what are the prerequisites for qualification? Okay, so in the spirit of the Olympics, the International Olympic Committee wants as many nationalities to be represented in as many disciplines as possible. That's the spirit of the Olympic Games. So what they do to facilitate that is they allow every single nation to put forth one male and one female B standard athlete. What does B standard mean? B standard means that it's someone of a professional level, but unlikely that someone's going to, be competing for the podium, or maybe even for the top 10 or top 20. But it's someone of a professional level that will not embarrass themselves or their nation. That is what I'm aiming for giant slalom. Now, the level for giant slalom is 160 FIS points. I won't get into the details of that because it's very complicated, but your points is kind of like your handicap. The lower, the better. I started off at 1,000 points. I'm now down to 500 points. I should hope that by the end of this 3-week period of being on the road and hitting 8 races across 4 states, starting with 2 races here in Wyoming tomorrow, that I'll get my points closer to 300. And if things go according to plan, I should be qualified by November, or maybe as late as December this year, hopefully I can get to the Southern Hemisphere, which is a whole month or 2 months ahead of the qualification deadline in January.
That's amazing. So it's fully planned. COVID, even with COVID, you've still managed to plan it out.
Yeah.
Obviously, but for those who know, they've obviously had to push in quite a lot of races in Europe and North America to make sure that everybody gets the points, because it's obviously for everyone's sake. With getting these FIS points, honestly, that's amazing. And I know that Cool Runnings has been a bit of an inspiration, right? And I was actually talking to my friend who's also half Jamaican, and he said, you've got to chat to him about that. Okay, yeah, I will do. So it has inspired you, but do you also think, a bit like Eddie the Eagle inspired skiers during the 80s? Do you see this as your way of kind of inspiring the next generation from smaller kind of non-traditional winter sports countries? Like, is that kind of a goal for you partly?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, born in England in 1983, the bobsleigh team was in 1988 in Calgary, and the movie with John Candy came out in 1993 when I was 9-10 years old. And being a half Jamaican kid, that movie was just everything, right? It was incredible. It's such a cult classic. And absolutely, if it wasn't for the 88 team and the 1993 movie, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. It's definitely inspired me to do it. And if I think back to the kind of genesis of when I first started ski, lots of people would throw kind of sideways jokes and comments about Cool Runnings at me in good heart. I don't take anything negative from it. And that's what kind of got the cogs turning. So definitely without the 88 team and the 93 movie, I wouldn't be here. And so much so that actually the driver from the 1988 Jamaican bobsled team is one of my mentors, Dudley Stokes. We speak every week.
Wow.
And he's been very helpful, helping me navigate some of the bureaucracy in sports, and how to kind of like navigate some of the stuff with regards to Jamaican officials. And again, just helping me with like sports psychology and preparation and all of that stuff. I hope that, my story can show people not only from smaller nations that might not be affiliated with winter sports, but as we said earlier, also people that may have missed the boat of skiing when they were a kid, or maybe they didn't ski with their buddies at college, and now they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and believe that the sport has passed them by. It's absolutely not true. And if I can go from 0 to Olympian in 6 years, then a 50-year-old can go from 0 to, enjoyable leisure skier in 6 months of dedication. And so I hope that it helps people look at winter sports. And from a Jamaican kind of point of view, Jamaica is a powerhouse in the summer games. In terms of medals per cap, Jamaica absolutely crushes it. Now, here's an interesting thing. There are 2.7 million Jamaicans in Jamaica, but there are 2 million Jamaicans across England, UK, and Canada. So there's a large number of Jamaicans in the diaspora that have access to winter sports. And I think a lot of that talent that Jamaica has in track and field could be pivoted and diverted towards the winter sports. And there's no reason we shouldn't be medaling in the winter games, in the next 2 or 3 winter games. There's just no reason not. I mean, we're such a powerhouse of athletics. We just need someone to show that it's possible and to tell a compelling story to get people into it.
Yeah, I mean, the bobsleigh team, obviously they did do a film, but they did also, not only are they a very good team now, but they also did inspire a lot of not just Caribbean islands, but Pacific islands, and
Yeah,
these smaller nations that might have super good sprinters, or sprinters to a level maybe not quite Olympic level, but using
yeah.
using those skills for bobsleigh, which is really cool, I think. And I mean, if they do a movie about you, who's going to play you?
Oh, that's a really good one. I never thought of that. Huh. I don't even have an answer for that. Wow. You know, yeah, I'll be ready for this National Snow Show in October. We can ask me that again.
I'll ask you again then. But so obviously with COVID, and I've looked on your Instagram and stuff, you've gotten really into backcountry skiing, because when, as a lot of ski enthusiasts know, when the slopes are closed, what else do you do but head out into the backcountry? And what part of backcountry skiing really kind of have you really enjoyed, and what advice again would you give to people who maybe are looking to go out and experience that adventure that backcountry skiing kind of gives you?
Yeah, so I say again, we're super blessed to be able to ski right now during the pandemic, and I'm looking up at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, and we have a great infrastructure of chairlifts and trams and gondolas that allow us to zip up the mountain and allow gravity to send us back down, and we can just do this ad nauseum all the way through the day. When you're backcountry skiing, you typically do one or a handful of smaller runs, and that's it. One of the things I really love about backcountry is that instead of having to depend on someone else to have a vision and an idea to set up all of this infrastructure, which is multi-million dollars and many years to get going, you can literally look out on the horizon. And I'm almost tempted to jump out of the car and show you some other stuff, but you can literally look across the horizon and be like, what's that? That looks good. Get out the Google Earth, get out the maps, pull out any books, watch the weather reports, see what's going on. And just, as long as you have the knowledge, which I'll talk about in a moment, you can go out and ski anything. And that is incredibly liberating, especially when you're doing something very remote and you know that it's just you and your partner, and there might not be anyone around for 20 or 30 miles. That's really magical. To add to that, when you've spent 3 or 4 hours climbing up something, you can go back and look at some of my videos on Instagram. Mount Taylor is one of them. When you ski that, minute or two down, you can be sure that you're really enjoying that because you've worked for it. You've really worked for it. You've earned those terms, as they say, and that's a magical thing about backcountry skiing. Now, for people that might be considering getting into it, look, it is very dangerous. Skiing is inherently a dangerous sport. But when you add to the fact that you're out there in the wild with no kind of like avalanche mitigation, you're in the wild. You're on your own. Unfortunately, this has been the deadliest year for avalanche fatalities in the United States. And I believe that's been a combination of two forces. A very weird snowpack year, which has been very dangerous, coupled with the pandemic and a lot of people not wanting to ski in bounds or not wanting to deal with that. And so a lot of newbies out in the backcountry that really just don't know what they're doing. So let's talk about that. When I'm out in the backcountry, I'm always with a buddy, unless I'm in somewhere that I know is very safe. And there are three pieces of equipment that we always have. We have a beacon, which basically it sounds grim, but it means that if I were to get buried under an avalanche under 10 or 20 feet of snow, or my buddy were to get buried, then I can use the beacon as a tracking device to find him, hopefully him still alive, or vice versa. I also have something called a probe, which is a metal wand that you throw out and extends to 12 feet. So you can dig down to find that person's body. I know it sounds grim, but this is the reality of the situation. And I just want to be blunt about it. And the final piece of equipment we always have is a shovel. So we can dig that person out, or we can be dug out. And so everyone out there has to have these three pieces of equipment. If you don't have them, just don't go into the backcountry. You're putting yourself and other people at risk. You also need to have an understanding of how the snow is working. And it's one of those things where you can put other people at danger and they could be doing absolutely everything right. But if you don't know what you're doing, you could trigger an avalanche above the people above you. So without getting too nanny or too tiger mom in the situation, it's the real deal in the backcountry. And so make sure you take the appropriate courses, buy the appropriate equipment, and just know what you're doing before you get out there. There are easier ways to get into it. Most mountains will allow some uphill travel, some only first thing in the morning, some only on designated routes. And I say route now, I've been in America too long. But that's a great way to kind of understand how your equipment works, getting your layers down because you'll sweat like a beast. If you dress like you're dressing in the resort, you'll overheat, and just figuring it out without being in danger because you're in an area that's controlled for avalanches by ski patrol, and ski patrol is just a phone call away in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything you've said. I think it's really important to have those three things, but also to know how to use them is really essential. And a bit like you said before when we were talking about how older people can get into skiing, everyone, I'm a backcountry skier myself, and ask. You can ask people, okay, is this should I go there? Should I go there? There's always people that will know more than you.
Totally.
And I think it's really important to kind of ask, because once you get out there in a safe manner, man, the adventure and the exploration and it opens a whole new world for skiers, in my opinion.
Yes,
anyway, I'm super passionate about it. I mean, it's just, I just love it.
I can see myself backcountry skiing later into life than resort skiing. I can see myself turning into a grumpy old man in my 60s and just wanting the freedom of being away from the crowds. And there's something so magical about
there, Benji. I'm already there.
Yeah, I'm not far off. But there's something very magical about the pace of slowly getting up and the exercise and being in the beautiful outdoors and just taking it in, as opposed to just looking at your phone on a chairlift and then enjoying the ride down. There's something about the pace of backcountry that I really, really enjoy. And I can see myself doing that as long as my body allows me later into life than sitting on a chairlift, for sure.
Yeah, and then you don't have to deal with annoying people, and it's bliss, mate. It's bliss. Anyway, I mean, let's move on to kind of what I've read. I've read that you see yourself as like a black representative in skiing, which is great, and it's something that, again, we spoke about just before this call. It's something that's really needed, and working in the ski industry in the UK, for me, I think it's really important. How do you think we can make skiing and snowboarding more inclusive, get more people involved? It's obviously a really difficult subject, but kind of, what's your kind of vision? How do you see it happen?
Look, I'm not comparing myself to Tiger Woods at all, but how many additional Black people do you think picked up golf clubs after Tiger became the superstar that he was, right? And I think before the Tiger era, maybe Black people just didn't feel welcome on golf courses. The same could be true for skiing, and that until we have like a Tiger Woods moment, and I'm not that guy, but I might inspire some 8-year-old to take up skiing who could be that guy in his late teens or something like that. Who knows? Until we see people out there that are doing it really, really well, and I know a few, great people of color that are incredible in the backcountry and at skiing and snowboarding. I think we just need a few of those kind of poster childs of the sport to help encourage more people of color to get into the sport. It is a complicated subject, and I don't ever think that skiing is racist. I just think that because you need to have had either your parents that skied, because you need to be like living close to a mountain, or because you need to be of a social economic demographic that you can afford to travel to skiing. If you look at Black people, and I'm talking predominantly about America because that's where I've experienced most of my skiing, their parents, 50 years ago or 40 years ago, there were no Black people skiing, right? There are a few now, but 50 years ago, there were no. So the chances of you being Black and having Black parents to ski is almost like 1%, 2%. Being located in the mountains, we know that, in general, the Black population of America live in cities, so they don't have the geographic advantage of being close to a mountain. And then we also know that in general, the average black household makes, I think it's almost 10 times less than the average white household on an average or a median basis. And so you're kind of like out of luck on all three of those things if you're a black person. But it's changing. More people of color are becoming CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. More people of color are going through higher education, Ivy League schools, and these people will get access to these types of sports. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, but hopefully it will happen in the next generation. Hopefully enough black people will ski in this era that they will then have children that will learn the sport and enjoy the outdoors as a result of their parents doing it. It's just going to take time.
No, I can agree more. And I guess things like, you were just saying to me that you've been out kind of on photo shoots with one of your sponsors, and I guess more non-white males, basically, and being in marketing myself, I'm fully guilty of this. But that as adverts and imagery on Instagram and all of that kind of helps, doesn't it?
Totally.
So no, I really appreciate your thoughts on that. And yeah, I mean, we're coming to the end of this, what I call après work. It's not for Benji, because he's about to head out on the cross country or Nordic skiing route.
Yep.
Just really quickly, you're going to be speaking at the National Snow Show at the NEC in October. Why do you think it's so important we have a ski and snowboard show in the UK, and how do you think it really helps the industry?
It's just about access, right? As we started off this live feed, I forget the lady's name, but thank you for the question. She asked about the inaccessibility of the sport. Having the ability to go to a snow show and meet a bunch of vendors, maybe get on a virtual ski machine. I'm not sure if there's something like that coming, but just kind of like getting access to it, something that might be just a half an hour drive or an hour train ride away, will kind of like allow people access to the sport and the community that surrounds the sport without the commitment of saying, okay, we're going to put down a few £1,000s and go to the south, go to France and ski. And so I think these things are super important, especially for a place like England, where the majority of people that ski jump on a plane to do it. So it gives them like a low commitment, a low financial investment route to kind of see what's going on in skiing.
That's awesome. And yeah, we're really looking forward to having you there. We're looking forward to following your journey. How can people follow your journey?
Yeah, it's nice and simple. You can go to benji.ski, benji.ski. You can either put that into your browser to go to my website where I keep that up to date, or that'll take you straight to my Instagram username if you type that into Instagram. So super simple.
And it is well worth following you. I think it's hilarious. I saw the video, I think you posted today or yesterday, of your coach falling whilst follow camming you down the route. That was absolute Instagram gold.
Yeah,
Benji,
so we were thinking about that shot for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we were waiting for the right day when it was warm enough. We were waiting for the right day when I was training in the full-on race suit, because I don't always do that. And so I asked my coach to follow me with this big, like 10-foot selfie stick and the 360 camera on the end of it, which obviously captures everything. And so in my most recent story, if you jump on there, you'll see me making the first few gates, and then all of a sudden the camera just hits the snow. Now, the beautiful thing about the 360 camera is it films all around. So in the post-processing, I turn the camera around and we look at my coach. Fern is his name. He's been such a gem, such a great guy in this story, 65 years old. He's kind of following me down, and he changes from snowplow to like a side slide and just catches the inside of one of his skis. It pops off and the poor guy smashes into the snow at like 30 miles an hour. He was okay, so I can smile and laugh about it. But it's a good video.
I loved the commitment he had to keeping the camera up as well. He was not letting go of that camera.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
That's also, Benji, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Good luck with your races tomorrow and onwards. We will keep track of your progress. But for now, take care of yourself, mate, and see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.